All right, so get ready because today we are diving into something truly fascinating and a little spicy, the evolution of human sexuality.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring this using excerpts from Jared Diamond's book, Why is Sex Fun? And let me tell you, this book is full of surprises.
It really is.
Like, did you know that from an evolutionary perspective, a dog would find your sex life utterly baffling?
It's true. Humans are truly outliers in the animal kingdom when it comes to sex. We've developed all sorts of complex behaviors and social norms around it,
Right.
many of which seem completely unnecessary from a purely reproductive standpoint.
Yeah. Okay, so let's unpack this a little.
Yeah.
One of the biggest head scratchers that Diamond talks about is concealed ovulation.
Right.
I mean, most mammals make it pretty obvious when the females are fertile, right? You know, bright color scent changes the whole shebang.
Yep.
But humans, not so much.
Exactly. Unlike our primate cousins who advertise their fertility, human females have evolved to hide it. Now, you might think this would make it harder to reproduce. Yeah, for sure.
But it's actually a brilliant evolutionary strategy.
Okay. I am intrigued. How does hiding something as crucial as fertility help us pass on our genes?
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive.
Well, think about it from the perspective of an early human male.
Okay.
If he can't tell when the female is fertile, his best bet is to mate frequently and stick around
Right.
to make sure he doesn't miss that window of opportunity.
So it's less about timing and more about persistence.
Precisely. And this need for frequent mating likely played a key role in cementing monogamous relationships.
Okay.
It encouraged males to invest more in a particular female and her offspring,
Right.
leading to stronger pair bonds and a higher likelihood of the children surviving.
Wow, so something that seems like a biological disadvantage hinder fertility might actually be the secret sauce behind human love and family.
Well, yeah, you could say that.
That's wild.
It's pretty amazing.
But if the goal is just passing on genes, wouldn't it be more efficient to just mate when it's guaranteed to result in pregnancy like a lot of other animals do?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Humans engage in a lot of sex that has nothing to do with procreation. Think about sex during pregnancy,
Right.
after menopause, or even just during non-fertile periods of the month.
Yeah.
It seems inefficient.
Yeah. For a purely biological perspective, you'd think we'd have evolved to be more strategic about it. Save the energy, so to speak.
But remember, evolution isn't just about reproduction. It's also about survival.
Right.
And for humans, survival depends heavily on social bonds.
Okay.
Frequent sex, even when it's not going to result in pregnancy, strengthens those bonds. It reinforces the connection between partners, creates a sense of intimacy and trust,
Right.
and ultimately helps to hold the social unit together.
So it's like those seemingly frivolous booty calls are actually laying the foundation for a stable family structure that ensures the survival of the offspring. Okay,
Yeah.
Diamond is really making me rethink my views on casual sex.
It all ties back to this idea that human sexuality is much more complex than just a biological drive to reproduce.
Right.
It's intertwined with our social needs, our emotional drives, and even our cognitive abilities.
And this brings us to another point where humans break the mold, the role of fathers.
Yeah.
In many mammal species, the males essentially peace out after mating, leaving the females to raise the offspring alone. But human dads, they often stick around and play an active role in child rearing.
That's right. And this, too, is likely linked to concealed ovulation and the need for frequent mating. By encouraging males to invest more in a particular female, and her offspring concealed ovulation paved the way for the evolution of paternal care.
Right.
Human babies are incredibly helpless for a long time, far more so than most other primates.
Right, they need constant care and protection, so having two parents around to share the burden makes a huge difference in terms of survival.
Exactly. And this brings us to a fascinating question. Why didn't male lactation become the norm in humans?
Wait, seriously, men could breastfeed? I had no idea. Why didn't that catch on?
It's a question that has puzzled evolutionary biologists for a long time.
Yeah.
It seems like a missed opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But if we think about the demands of early human life, it makes more sense.
Oh.
Imagine a group of hunter-gatherers on the move. A male's primary role would have been to protect the group from predators, hunt for food, and provide strength and security.
I see. So while being able to provide milk would have been beneficial, those other contributions were probably even more crucial for the group's survival.
Precisely. It's all about trade-offs.
Oh.
And in the grand scheme of things, evolution seems to have favored other thumbs of male contribution over lactation.
Okay.
But the fact that the potential for male lactation exists at all speaks to the fascinating plasticity of our biology.
Okay, we've covered concealed ovulation, the role of dads, and the potential for men to breastfeed. What other mind-blowing revelations about human sexuality does Diamond have in store for us?
Well, let's talk about another unique feature of human life that might seem counterintuitive from an evolutionary standpoint: menopause.
Menopause, isn't it strange that women stop reproducing midway through their lives, while most animals remain fertile until they die?
Yeah.
It seems like a waste of perfectly good reproductive years.
It does seem like a puzzle, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But as with many things in human evolution, there's a fascinating explanation.
Okay.
Menopause, despite seeming like a disadvantage, may actually be an adaptation that enhances the survival of offspring.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does ending fertility help future generations?
Think about it. Older mothers face higher risks during childbirth, and their offspring are more likely to have complications.
Okay.
By ceasing reproduction, women can shift their energy and resources towards caring for existing children and grandchildren.
Ah, so it's like an evolutionary investment strategy.
Uh-huh.
Instead of focusing on producing more offspring, older women can devote themselves to ensuring the success of the ones they already have.
Exactly. And this ties into what's known as the grandmother hypothesis, which suggests that grandmothers play a vital role in human societies. They provide care for grandchildren, share their wisdom and knowledge, and contribute to the overall well-being of the group.
That's a pretty powerful concept. So, menopause, which might seem like a biological endpoint, actually opens up a whole new chapter in a woman's life,
Right.
one where she can contribute to the survival of her lineage in a different but equally important way. It's fascinating how everything seems to connect back to this drive to ensure the success of future generations.
It really is. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of human sexuality. Why are we drawn to certain physical features in a potential mate?
Okay.
What makes someone attractive?
Okay. Yeah, that's something I've always wondered about. Is it all about cultural influences, or is there some deeper biological reason behind why we find certain people attractive?
Well, there's a fascinating concept called the handicap principle that sheds light on this.
Okay.
Diamond uses the example of the peacock's tail to illustrate this idea.
Okay.
It's a huge showy display that's completely impractical and makes the peacock more vulnerable to predators.
Right. It's beautiful, but you'd think it would be an evolutionary disadvantage.
Exactly. But the fact that a peacock can survive, despite this seemingly detrimental feature, signals to potential mates that it must have incredible genes to compensate.
Wow.
It's like saying, look at me, I'm so strong and healthy, I can afford to carry this ridiculous tail and still thrive.
So it's like a paradoxical signal of strength weakness as a display of strength. I'm starting to see how this might apply to human attraction.
Precisely. Some researchers believe that certain features in humans, like a muscular physique in men or full lips in women, may have evolved as similar signals.
So those features we find attractive might be subconscious indicators of good genes and overall health.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical features.
Right.
Think about humor, intelligence, or even kindness.
Okay.
These traits might also signal good genes or the ability to contribute to the well-being of a partner and offspring.
So it's like our biology is playing matchmaker, using these subtle cues to guide us toward partners who are likely to produce healthy and successful offspring. It's amazing how these seemingly random preferences might actually be rooted in our evolutionary past.
It's a testament to the power of natural selection to shape even the most seemingly trivial aspects of our lives.
Yeah, truly incredible. We are just getting started unpacking all of this, so stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive into why is sex fun?
It really is remarkable how evolution has shaped our preferences and behaviors, in these subtle ways. And it's not just about biology. Of course, Diamond also explores how cultural influences play a huge role in shaping our sexual attitudes and behaviors.
Right, because what's considered normal or attractive can vary drastically from one culture to another. It makes you realize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to understanding human sexuality.
Exactly. And Diamond provides some fascinating examples of this cultural variation. He talks about the 8 Indians of Paraguay, who have a social structure where both men and women often have multiple sexual partners.
What really, that's so different from the monogamous model that's prevalent in, many Western societies? What's the evolutionary logic behind that kind of system?
Well, in the Yip culture, hunting skills are highly valued. Women are more likely to have sex with skilled hunters, even if they're already in a relationship with someone else. It's a way of ensuring that their children have the best possible chance of survival.
So it's not just about romantic love or personal preference. It's about making strategic choices to maximize the well-being of the offspring. It's like they're playing the evolutionary game on a whole different level.
It's a fascinating example of how cultural norms can intersect with biological drives in unexpected ways. And it highlights the fact that human sexuality isn't just about individual desires.
Right.
It's also about the needs of the community and the survival of the group.
It makes you wonder how many other cultural variations are out there and how they might reflect different evolutionary pressures or social adaptations, like this whole hidden world of sexual diversity that we rarely get a glimpse of.
And that's what makes anthropology so fascinating. It allows us to step outside our own cultural bubble and see the world through a different lens. But even with all this diversity, there are certain aspects of human sexuality that seem to be universal.
Like what?
Well, Diane talks about how, despite the wide range of sexual practices across cultures, there are certain commonalities. For example, the vast majority of human societies have some form of incest taboo.
That makes sense. Incest can lead to genetic problems in offspring, so it's not surprising that cultures would develop
Areas can shape the cultural norms, even when people aren't consciously aware of the underlying reasons.
Okay, so we've been talking about concealed ovulation, the role of fathers, menopause, cultural influences. It's clear that human sexuality is incredibly complex, but Diamond also points out some of the seemingly inefficient aspects of sex.
Right, he talks about how sperm production is energy intensive, how sex takes time away from other activities, and how mating animals are vulnerable to predators.
Yeah, when you think about it, there are a lot of potential downsides to sex. It makes you wonder why we bother at all.
Well, as we've discussed, the benefits outweigh the costs. Frequent sex strengthens pair bonds, reinforces social connections, and helps to ensure the survival of offspring.
So even though it might seem like we're wasting time and energy, those seemingly frivolous sexual encounters actually serve a deeper evolutionary purpose.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical act of sex.
Right.
It's about the emotional intimacy, the bonding, the shared experiences that strengthen relationships and create a sense of belonging.
It's like sex is this glue that holds human societies together.
It's a powerful force, no doubt, and it's a testament to the ingenuity of evolution that it has harnessed this drive for pleasure and connection to serve such important functions.
Diamond really makes you appreciate the intricate interplay between biology and culture. It's not just one or the other. It's this constant back and forth that has shaped who we are as a species.
It's a fascinating dance, and one that continues to evolve as our societies change and our understanding of ourselves deepens.
You know, I'm starting to realize that studying human sexuality isn't just about understanding the mechanics of reproduction or the cultural norms around sex. It's about exploring the very essence of what it means to be human.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about our desires, our fears, our vulnerabilities, our capacity for love and connection. It's all wrapped up in this one fascinating, complex, and often messy aspect of our lives.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about everything from concealed ovulation to cultural variations in sexual behavior. But there's one big question that Diamond leaves us with, and it's a doozy.
You're talking about his question about the relationship between knowledge and behavior, right? Does understanding the why behind our sexual behaviors actually change how we view them, or even how we view ourselves?
Exactly. It's like, okay, now we know all this stuff about the evolution of sex, but does it change anything? Does it make us more accepting of different sexual practices? Does it make us feel more or less in control of our own desires?
It's a question that each of us has to answer for ourselves, and there are no easy answers.
It's almost like Diamond is throwing down the gauntlet. He's saying, here's the science, here's the evolutionary backstory, now what are you going to do with it?
And that's where the real work begins. It's not just about absorbing this knowledge. It's about integrating it into our own lives, our own relationships, and our own understanding of ourselves.
It's a challenge to think critically, to examine our own biases, and to approach the complexities of human sexuality with both curiosity and compassion.
And it's a challenge worth embracing because ultimately understanding ourselves better is the key to living more authentic and fulfilling lives.
It really is a powerful question to consider. I mean, does knowing that certain behaviors might have evolutionary roots make us more or less likely to judge those behaviors or to judge ourselves?
Yeah, it's a complex issue for sure. On one hand, you could argue that understanding the evolutionary pressures that shaped us could lead to greater empathy and acceptance.
So instead of thinking, that's weird or that's wrong, we might be more inclined to think, well, given the circumstances our ancestors faced, that behavior actually makes sense.
Exactly. We might start to see certain behaviors not as morally good or bad, but as adaptations that helped our ancestors survive and reproduce. It's like viewing things through a different lens.
But on the other hand, as you said earlier, just because a behavior has an evolutionary explanation doesn't mean it's automatically acceptable in modern society. We still have free will and the ability to make choices that go against our biological programming.
Absolutely. And this is where the conversation about nature versus nurture gets really interesting. Our genes might predispose us to certain behaviors, but ultimately we have the capacity to choose how we act.
So it's not a free pass to just blame everything on our ancestors. We still have to take responsibility for our own choices.
Precisely. It's about understanding the complex interplay between our biology, our environment, and our own individual values.
This reminds me of something Diamond said about how we shouldn't view evolution as a straight line of progress. It's more like a branching tree with all sorts of twists and turns along the way.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights the fact that human sexuality, like any other complex trait, has evolved through a process of trial and error adaptation and sometimes even random chance.
So there's no perfect or ideal way to express our sexuality. It's all about finding what works for us as individuals and as societies, while also respecting the rights and well-being of others.
Well said. And that brings us back to Diamond's final challenge. Does understanding the why behind our behaviors change how we view them?
I have to admit, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. It's made me realize that there are so many layers to human sexuality, biological, evolutionary, cultural, personal.
It's a topic that defies easy answers, but that's what makes it so fascinating to explore.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, and with each layer, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the grand scheme of things.
And perhaps that understanding can help us to approach this aspect of our lives with more curiosity, more compassion, and maybe even a little bit of humor.
Because, let's face it, sex can be pretty funny sometimes, especially when you consider all the awkward evolutionary shenanigans that got us to where we are today.
Indeed, it's a reminder that we're all part of this grand, messy, and often hilarious human story.
Well, folks, I think we've officially reached the bottom of this deep dive. We've explored the evolution of human sexuality, uncovered hidden connections, and wrestled with some pretty profound questions about the nature of our species.
It's been an enlightening journey, and I commend you for your thoughtful questions and your willingness to delve into these complex topics.
The pleasure was all mine, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this intellectual adventure. We hope you've learned something new, challenged your perspectives, and maybe even gained a deeper understanding of your own place in the evolutionary tapestry of life.
And remember, the exploration doesn't end here. There's always more to discover, more to question, and more to understand about ourselves and the world around us.
So keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep embracing the complexities of the human experience. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep seeking knowledge.
Farewell, fellow knowledge seekers. May your thirst for understanding never be quenched.